Welcome to week 5 of Mpai 760 here at Georgetown University's Applied Intelligence Program. I just want to start off with announcements. As I mentioned earlier, I want to have this Tuesday a Zoom session, and I'll send out the link this week, 24 July, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we can talk about the paper, we can talk about jobs, careers, anything that you think is relevant to the course. The one thing I ask is that you have your questions, going into the Zoom session. It's not going to be me just spouting out stuff. I want to answer your inquiries. So I would ask that you start the paper, start your research, so you can kind of start fleshing stuff out on it this week. So in the announcements, please, or when you acknowledge that you've watched this video, please let me know if you can make it. So yeah, Tuesday, 24 July, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So current events, Trump-Putin summit. I apologize for the typo there. So that was this past week. A lot of press on it, a lot of issues that have come out of it. What I do want to just bring up is the election hacking, and a lot of it has been kind of lost in what actually happened and how this is relevant. And what I would recommend that you watch is the video Putin's Revenge, which I now require for the intro class. It's a PBS Frontline, and it discusses what the actual hacking was. And amidst all the salacious details that get out there, what really was the influence operation was the Russians hacking into both John Podesta's and the DNC, Democratic National Committee's, emails and hacking them and then spreading them on WikiLeaks, DC Leaks, so that the mainstream media would cover them in a very gossipy way. And, you might hear that Russia manipulated Facebook and Twitter, but I think this is really what was the coup de grace that essentially gave Trump the election. It was the drumbeat of story after story after story after story, particularly John Podesta's emails when they got hacked, that really impacted Clinton. And so the question that comes up is the Intel failure on this. And this is what the Intel failure, there's two failures. One, we knew Russia was involved in cyber for years. That wasn't a secret. What we didn't really realize is that Russia would weaponize cyber in the information space, that they would use it to manipulate media and news sources. That's what Russia's interference was. That was the primary issue. And the second thing I bring up, and for those of you who took the intro class with me, the Intel has to drive a risk reduction measure, and it has to be reasonable risk reduction measures. So the question I want to leave you with is, should the DNC, John Podesta, or any senior level person have taken more reasonable precautions on their email with the intelligence or what they knew about Russian interference beforehand? And again, it's something simple as two-factor authentication, which is what you do probably to get online to your bank or your medical issues or your medical insurance. That would have stopped the DNC hack. That would have stopped John Podesta's email. And that's a perfect example of risk of an intelligence on Russia's operations driving a reasonable risk reduction measure. And that was the failure, I think, in the intelligence community. That was the failure in the DNC and John Podesta. And that's really what the Russian hacking was. So, a lot of stuff gets put out there, but that's essentially what it was, that how the Russians interfered with the election. And I'll let you decide whether, again, there were reasonable risk reduction measures that could have been implemented in 2016, and then going forward from 2018 to 2020 elections. So paper overview, you will be getting paper next assigned this week. There's two topics, a historical topic and a more contemporary counterterrorism policy paper. So what I'm looking for if you do the historical paper is connect. So let's say you're doing it on the FLN or the Irgun, which you read about in week 2. Connect that, their tactics, their strategy, their use of media, their use of technology to what ISIS and Al-Qaeda is, which you just read about this past week. That's what I'm looking for in your papers if you choose to do the history one. If you choose to do the counterterrorism strategies, again, go from Bush 2, the son, to Obama to Trump, and compare and contrast. And I'm looking for contrasting pieces that you can bring up in your papers. And you could talk about the threats. Each one faced different threats. Trump might be a little bit earlier, but each showed a measure of effectiveness or non-effectiveness, however you want to characterize it. And each took different stances on what I call the controversial issues. Wireless wiretap or warrantless wiretapping, enhanced interrogation techniques, drones, those types of issues that have permeated through all three administrations. So again, contrast them, have a strong argument. Tell me which ones, if you choose that one, which techniques worked, which strategies worked, what was effective, what wasn't. So bring that out in your papers, and that's what I'm looking for. Start thinking about it now. Please come to the information session on Tuesday if you have more detail or you have more questions. And then finally, week 5, I'm going to kind of give you, again, just get the essays done. It's about intelligence contracting, which is very relevant to probably most of you because you're either in those jobs or you want a job like that. And then it's going to ask, is it effective? Is it not? What are the strengths and weaknesses of intelligence contracting? And feel free to bring that up in your papers because that is a strategy employed, particularly by the Bush administration, tried to curb it in the Obama administration. Whether it was effective or not is up to you, and then has now exploded back up on the Trump administration. So if you want to tie that into this week's to the midterm paper, feel free to do so. So that's the issues for this week. If there's questions or issues, please let me know.